Hi everybody, welcome to the first video of my lockdown English lessons. First thing I want to say is I hope you're all well, and I hope your families are all well and you're all managing to stay safe in these very strange times. We are all well. I haven't worked since Friday the 13th. I hope that wasn't a significant date or anything. So I don't know how this is going to go in the next few weeks. I guess none of us do. I want to do one of these each week. Maybe we'll do 2, 3 or 4 and then we can go back to normal. Or it could be that we do 4, 5 or 6 and then I have to go and work in McDonald's. Who knows? Let's see. So I want to do this for 2 reasons. The first reason is it's really important for you guys to keep in touch with your English. Don't forget we meet every week, and that's an opportunity normally for you to practice speaking English in a safe place. No one's going to laugh at you. Okay, maybe I'll laugh sometimes. Maybe the others too, a little bit. But it's a safe place. It's not an important business meeting or anything like that. It's really important that you hear other people speak. You hear a native English speaker, that's me, modeling good English. And you also get correction on your grammar and you get correction on your pronunciation, as well as learning new vocabulary. So it's really important for you guys for that reason. And the second reason is I'm running out of things to do. Now, I need you to pay attention now, because in this next section, we're going to talk about things that we're going to use in the lesson next week. So, are you ready? So, since the start of the lockdown, I've done a million jobs in the house. I've taken all the glass back to the recycling. I've taken the paper back to the recycling. I've taken all the garden waste to the tip. I've tidied my office. I've done all the washing. I've sorted my screwdrivers out. Trust me, I really need something interesting to do. But on the positive side, during this lockdown, we've been doing many things differently too. We've been spending more time together, we've been sleeping longer, which is good. We've been eating better, we've been doing more sport, we've been practicing our musical instruments, we've even been learning Italian, for example. Dio sono annoiato. I've been doing Pilates. Trust me, I really need something interesting to do. So there'll be more on that next week, and if you can figure out what the topic will be for next week's lesson, then well done. For today's lesson then, I just wanted to think about some of the vocabulary you might have heard or you might have seen over the last few weeks. Vocabulary I've certainly been using to talk about the coronavirus situation. I'll put some of the words up on the screen as we go. But I will also put a list at the end of all the vocabulary that we've had in the video. Our first word then today is lockdown. You heard it at the start of the video. It's an interesting word. I guess in German the word would be Ausgangssperre. And it comes from prisons. And you can imagine in a prison, if there's some trouble, there's some fighting maybe, then the guards, they want to get everybody back in their cells and the doors locked. And this is called a lockdown. It's actually quite a strong word, and what we've seen in the last few weeks is governments trying to be very creative and try to find other ways of saying basically lockdown. The next couple of words we need to think about are quarantine and isolation. Quarantine is a really interesting word. In German you have the word Quarantäne. It comes from the same root. It's a Latin word. And it's a very interesting story. We have to go back to the 14th century, to the port of Dubrovnik, which is now in Croatia, but at that time it was controlled by Venice and Italy. And this was the time of the plague. In English we call it the bubonic plague, in German the Schwarze Pest. And they came up with a new rule because there was a lot of people coming in ships and bringing the plague with them. They came up with a new rule. You had to wait in the harbour in your ship for 30 days. And they call this a Trentino, in German, 30 a 30-day time period. This was pretty successful, and so after that, they decided over the years, they increased this to 40 days, and of course the Italian word for 40 is quaranta, so this became known as a quarantino. Isolation is an interesting word too. And you technical guys in the groups, we've talked about this before. We talked about it in the context of the difference between isolation and insulation. For those of you who haven't heard that, then I'll try and sum it up quickly. Isolation and insulation, they basically have the same meaning. It's about keeping one thing separate from another thing. But when we talk about isolation or isolating, then really what we're talking about is separating. So for example, if you're a child at school, I'm speaking from my own experience now, if you're a badly behaved child at school, then maybe the teacher wants to isolate you, to take you away from the other kids because you're causing a problem for them. That's one reason why you might want to isolate. Another reason, and the reason why we're talking about it today, is the idea of self-isolation, that you would want to keep yourself isolated, keep yourself away from other people because of health risks. Insulation, on the other hand, has more to do with protection. So for example, what would you insulate? You might insulate electric cable. Again, it's about separation. It's separating you from the electric current, which is generally a good idea. Or you might want to insulate your house against the cold. Normally you're insulating against something. You're protecting yourself against something. It's also quite interesting to see how different countries are talking about this idea of self-isolating or staying at home. In the UK at first, they were talking about cocooning elderly people in their homes. Now, I don't think that's a nice way to treat elderly people. Let them live in their homes. In the US, one of the confusing phrases that they used was the shelter-in-place order. I'm not sure if you know the word shelter. Normally shelter would be some kind of Schutz in German. Zuflucht, you could also say, or Obdach. It's a place of safety when there's danger. And this idea of shelter in place is actually not correct. Shelter in place is a thing in America. It's a status in America. And they use it when there's some kind of natural disaster, like a hurricane or a flood or something. And more recently, they've used it when there's been school shootings or mass shootings in public. And the idea is that you stay in place wherever you are, even if it's not your home. And that's not actually what they mean at the moment. What they do mean is stay at home. We've also heard a lot of words over the last few weeks to talk about the coronavirus. One of them is outbreak. This would translate as Ausbruch in German. And I guess if you want to think about it as a kind of increase, a disease starts with an outbreak, and then if it is not contained, then it becomes an epidemic. And if the epidemic is not contained, then it becomes a pandemic. And that's where we are now. Actually, this is a really useful technique for learning vocabulary. If we can think of the vocabulary as part of a set of words or as part of a scheme. In this case, we had outbreak, epidemic, pandemic, increasing in size each time. So if we think of them as a scale, it's much easier to remember them. Also works with examples like a village, town, city. See if you can think of some. A little bit of homework, a task for you. One more interesting piece of vocabulary, I'll read it in German first, der Hamsterkäufe. This is very funny for us British people, because we imagine hamsters with their cheeks filled with nuts, or Germans with their shopping trolleys filled with toilet roll. It's very, very funny. We don't have a similar word in English. We have panic buying, which sounds a little bit more serious. I think I would rather go hamster shopping than panic buying. One last thing, the word itself, coronavirus. It's very long, isn't it? Do we really say coronavirus every time we use it? I guess COVID-19 is a little bit quicker, but that feels like it's too technical. I noticed on social media some possible alternatives. Some people are saying the Rona, I've got the Rona, or the Roni, I've got the Roni. I've even seen it referred to as the round boy. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. I hope it's been interesting, and I hope it's been a useful point of contact for you and your English this week. If you have any ideas or suggestions for topics, ideas we could talk about during these videos, then just let me know. Also, don't forget to let me know what you've been doing during the lockdown. Okay, have a great week. Stay home, wash your hands, stay healthy.